Hello, my most amazing artists. Today in art, we are going to be talking about the human form in art. That means the human body. I want you to look at these pictures throughout history, that means time and place, and see the differences and similarities. First, we'll start with ancient art. That means really old. Figures were usually made for toys or for worship. And we'll move on to prehistoric art. Pre means before, and historic means history, so that means before history was recorded. Figures were really simple looking, as you see, and people were often shown hunting. That's how they got their food back then. Then, in Western Asia, or a place called Mesopotamia, ancient people made these things called votives, or votive figurines, that they made to give as a gift to the gods that they believed in. In ancient Egypt, they believed that some of their gods would come to them in the form of an animal. That's why you see these funny human bodies with animal heads. The Egyptians chose to show the human body from its clearest angle, which is why you won't ever see an Egyptian two-dimensional artwork where the person's face is looking straight at you. It's always to the side. So they actually use a grid system to make the measurements of where those parts of the body would go, the arms, the head, and the legs. And that's why when you see figures from ancient Egyptian art, they all look really similar. Now we'll move on to classical art. This means Greek and Roman art. Artists carefully looked at the human body. They were really concerned with making it look really real, every last muscle, because they were really interested in being warriors, and they were also really interested in sports. Actually, this is where the idea of the Olympics began. In Eastern art, by that I mean East Indian and Asian art, figures were usually shown for religious purposes, like this Buddha, as a statue. But you can see in this Japanese print that human bodies were also shown, like these, of actors that were in theater to advertise for their plays or to tell stories. In what's called Byzantine art, artists were more worried about the religious stories that they were telling than about their bodies looking correct. So you can see these bodies look a little bit stiff. They don't really have much movement. In the Renaissance, which is a period of art, artists really were seeking knowledge and they loved to learn. So they studied the human body called anatomy, and they wanted people to look real. They studied the bones and the muscles and wanted to really make things look like they were in real life. In art called Impressionism, it was really more about being in the moment, or having an impression of something. So they would usually make artwork of ordinary subjects and people enjoying their leisure time, meaning what people do for fun or relaxation. Then in an art style called social realism or regionalism, what people were interested in was what was happening at that time and place. They really like to focus on the everyday human or the average worker. You can see these people are working on a farm. In Cubism, they really were not worried about having people look real. In Cubism, it was more about the mood and the style of the artwork than about looking realistic. And also in abstract art, it was the same. It's not about really looking like a person, although you can tell that there is a head, you can kind of see it's a body, but it was more about the mood that looking at this artwork makes you feel. In something called pop art, artists were really colorful with their work, and they were inspired by things that were happening in the world around them, socially and politically. Kind of like our inspiration artist for today named Keith Haring. Keith Haring brought art all over into his community, making big murals in train stations and in cities of figures like this that he really simplified and used bright colors or just black and white for. Today we are going to make a human body inspired by the figures and artworks of Keith Haring. We are going to start with a pencil. And I know it might seem silly because this is art, but we're actually just going to draw a simple stick figure. Then we are going to make a big bubble around our stick figure. After you make your bubble around, you'll erase the stick figure inside. Now, mine looks a little bit goofy, so I'm going to make some edits and changes. For instance, his middle was a little skinny, so I made that fatter. I didn't like the way his head looked, so I changed that too. Then you are going to add some extra details to your artwork. So when you add these details, I want you to think about what you might like your figure to be doing. So, of course, I wanted mine to be painting a picture, but you can have yours playing a sport or dancing like at a disco party. You could have yours pretend to be a character in a game. It is totally up to you what you want your character to be doing. Mine is drawing one that's playing basketball. You can see that you can position the arms and the legs of your figure however you want. So think about what their body might look like when they are making an action. If they're jumping or dancing or painting or shooting a basket or kicking a soccer ball, then you are going to add some kind of a background. I made mine super simple, just a pattern with polka dots. Then what I want you to do is, if you do have a black marker, I want you to trace your pencil lines with black so they stand out just like Keith Haring's pictures. Then we are going to be coloring this awesome artwork in. So I want you to make sure that you try your very best to color all of the important parts or color in your whole paper. So I'm using markers here, but you can obviously use any kind of material that you want. Then you'll have your finished Keith Haring inspired human figure in art to share.